Brandon Figueroa versus Stephen Fulton 2, the rematch, the co-main event of David Benavidez versus David Morrell. Let's get into it. Let's start with their respective records. Figueroa, 25 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 19 wins by way of knockout. Cool Boy Steph, 22 wins, 1 loss, and 8 wins by way of knockout. So it's been a few years since we've seen these guys, right? They last fought back in 2021. That fight was at 122 pounds. This is at 126 pounds. So a few different things. Now, after Steve Fulton's win against Brandon Figueroa, he would go on to fight Danny Roman next before stepping into the ring to fight Naoya Inoue, where he suffered his first loss. And that was a fight that he probably did not expect it to go that way, right? Like, no fighter goes into the ring and expects to lose. But it happens. And so when a fighter goes in and they lose, there's a lot of questions as to what's going to happen now. High elite athletes and high elite sports, it's not that you don't have doubts, but you try to block out the doubts. But when you lose a fight, now you're starting to think, man, how am I going to respond? And I think how you lose a fight matters, right? Because when you go into the ring, you go into a fight and you lose a close decision victory, it's much different than when you go and you get stopped like Fulton did against Naoya Inoue in the 8th round. So now, you have to pick yourself up and get back into the swing of things, but also overcome some of the mental and emotional challenges that come with suffering your first loss, because that can always mess with a fighter, right? Humbles you in many ways. But a loss doesn't have to define you, but it can teach you and force you to reassess and see what things you need to improve on and where you went wrong. So that's been kind of some of the stuff from a hypothetical standpoint. I don't know Cool Boy Steph, but I would assume from my background in sports, that's probably some of the things that he's been having to work through in his recent fights in training camp and behind the scenes. Now, Figueroa, on his journey after his loss, he didn't stay at 122. He didn't waste no time. He moved up to 126 and fought some quality opponents. He stopped Carlos Castro in the 6th round. He had a hard-fought fight against Mark Magsayo. We know how explosive and how powerful Magsayo is. And then most recently, he stopped Jesse Magdaleno with a wicked body shot in the 9th round. So he's on a 3-fight win streak. And of those 3 fights, he stopped 2 of his 3 opponents. So, momentum is definitely in his favor. We've covered Figueroa enough on the channel to know what he's about, man. When you're fighting Figueroa, you better come in extremely well conditioned, because he is going to be well conditioned. He applies a lot of volume, a lot of pressure, and he's an excellent inside fighter, man. Excellent conditioning, if I didn't say that already. He doesn't have devastating power, like not devastating one-shot knockout type of power, but he's got an accumulation of power, man. Like, every shot is going to look similar and similar and similar, and his kind of momentum and power carries from round 1 to 12. He operates with a lot of pressure, and sometimes his pressure and his volume is his defense. And you have to be able to, and you have to want to take risks when you're fighting Figueroa, because he's going to keep throwing. Now, can you catch him in between a throw? Now, can you catch him in between when he's punching? Fulton was able to do that a decent amount in the first fight, right? Fulton wasn't known to be an inside fighter by no means, but I felt like he caught Figueroa when he was loading up for his next barrage of shots, and it would come in the ways of uppercuts or straight hands, and he countered Figueroa very well, and he got his licks in, right? When he had space to kind of stick and move and fight his style, he did very good at that. But at the same time, man, like, some of those rounds, especially during the championship rounds, it looked like Fulton was slowing down. It looked like he was tiring out, but you got to give him credit for this heart and his will, because he didn't fold, right? Like, he kept finding the energy he needed to not throw in the towel, to not quit, to not succumb to the heavy pressure that was right in front of his face, that Figueroa was imposing his will in the fight. It's hard to keep Figueroa in the center of the ring, man. Fulton in the championship rounds found himself in a compromised position, but he didn't panic, and that was probably the great thing. Sometimes you have a fighter who's stuck in the corner and they'll just swing for the heavens, and then that's when they get caught with an uppercut or a body shot to the ribs, and it's lights out for them. But Fulton showed good poise and good composure in heavy pressure situation. Fulton would go on to get the win, but I mean, it was a very close fight, man. And it just kind of depends on what you like more. Do you like the heavy volume, the pressure, the front foot fighter? Or do you like the one who is slipping and moving and more defensive but offensive enough? Like Fulton was landing some good shots, but it wasn't the shots to really discourage Figueroa, because Figueroa always came and was coming forward every single round, man. So just depends what you like more. Now, Fulton in his most recent fight, man, he was up tough against Carlos Castro, a same Carlos Castro that Brandon Figueroa stopped a couple fights before. And Fulton had some adversity. Like, it wasn't an easy fight for him in this new division, right? Castro was throwing some haymakers, some heavy punches, but they were a little far in between. But when his shots did connect and did land, man, I think Fulton felt it. Because in that fifth round, he got caught with a counter right hand that dropped him and put him on the canvas. When a fighter gets dropped, the notion is to get back up right away and to let the ego be at the forefront and to do whatever I got to do to even the score. But sometimes you get knocked down and you get up too quickly and it throws off your equilibrium. You got to give yourself time to recover a little bit. And I think Fulton's fight with Inoue prepared him for this, because when he got knocked down, he took his 8 count, his 9 count, and got back up and did not panic. Showed composure, showed how to operate calmness in the midst of chaos, and got himself back into the fight. I felt in the fight as well, too, like Castro could hurt Cool Boy Steph, but I never again got the sense that Fulton was doing enough to necessarily discourage him with his shots. It's not that he wasn't landing good, powerful shots of his own. There just wasn't a lot of steam and power behind it to stop Carlos Castro from coming forward. It was enough to slow him up, but didn't feel like it was enough to really discourage him. But again, you got to give the credit to Cool Boy Steph, man, because he showed a level of character and heart and grit and will that you want a fighter to have, especially when they've been knocked down. And he got himself back up, man, and he got himself the win, right? But there were some moments as the fight went on that Carlos Castro, if he would have let his hands go, probably would have been a little better outcome, maybe even a different outcome if it was 12 rounds. But nonetheless, man, it was a very good fight between those two. I'm looking forward to seeing how this rematch goes. Will the outcome be the same? Will it be different? Who will get the edge? So who wins? I think these are two different fighters right now at this stage in their career, man. Figueroa's got a lot of momentum on his way. He's been at this weight level longer than Cool Boy Steph has. So Figueroa has settled into this weight division, and it doesn't look like the weight is slowing him down by no means or compromised him in any way capacity. Honestly, it looked like it probably made him a little bit more stronger and made his punches a little bit harder. And this is a guy who carries that same energy and power from round 1 all the way to 12, probably to 15 if it went that far. So I think Cool Boy Steph has to fight a disciplined fight. While he does need to take some risk, man, he also needs to make sure that it's calculated risk and not just him fighting on emotion, right? He's got to get out of the pocket. He cannot stay on the ropes. He's got to move around the ring as best as he can and try to keep things in the center of the ring and just try to be a little slicker than Figueroa and counter him. He's got to be extremely disciplined. And I'm also in the notion of, if I beat you once before, there's a good chance that I can beat you again. In the first fight, in my breakdown of that fight, I went with Cool Boy Steph. But in this fight, man, I'm going the opposite side. I'm going Brandon Figueroa to win this fight by decision, possibly even a late stoppage. But I'm going to say decision. I think the judges are going to be favoring the pressuring guy a little bit more, at least from what we've seen most recently in certain fights. Who knows? That's just me hypothetically speaking and just kind of going on what I've seen personally. Maybe you've seen some things different. I also think, once again, I think Brandon Figueroa can hurt Cool Boy Steph, but I'm not sure if Fulton has the power to keep Figueroa honest. I like Figueroa by decision, possible late stoppage, but I'm going to say decision. So those are my thoughts. I would love to hear from you. How do you think this one goes? Who do you have winning? Let me know in the comment section below. So with all that being said, if you've been watching the video this long, do me a favor and like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll definitely see you next